Hello, FewCandy here, and welcome back to planetzoo, the beginner's guide. And if you want a little brush up on building techniques, please do go and check out the live stream that we did last time, where we went ahead and built out this little exhibit area for a couple of beetles, and it looks pretty plain and simple. Obviously some detailing needed in and around it, which we'll come and do on another live stream very soon. But we did go over a lot of kind of slightly more advanced building techniques for this, like shifting different grid sizes and adding elements to your walls, talking about the world axis rather than your item axis. So do go and check that out if you want a little brush up on building techniques, but that's fitted in quite nicely. I have also, for those of you on the live stream, I have also split out the transformer that we'd put into the back of this building here because it was having quite nasty negative effects on our guests. And it's now broken as well. So, wonderful. Let's go ahead and request a mechanic to fix that pretty quickly. So I'm actually just going to press pause because today we're going to be taking a viewer suggestion, and that is none other than actually my Patreon, Michael W. Thank you so much for this suggestion. I think it's pretty awesome. We are going to be building a bat cave along our rail track over here. So we're going to be talking about how you can work your terrain over your tracks and your exhibits and your paths and all the rest of it, and kind of try and detail up in quite a limited space. I also want to make sure that we're leaving enough space here because we're going to be putting in a sand cat habitat in this area as well, which will be our first actually indoor habitat building that we're going to be putting in, and that will help cover up some of the horrendous terrain work that we'll have on this side from our bat cave. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So the first things we need for bats are, of course, our walkthrough exhibits. So we're going to come into facilities and into animal exhibits, and we're going to get our walkthrough exhibit. Now I have actually reworked this track slightly, and that path is not joined up yet, I know that. Just so we had a little bit more room to play with for our sand cats, who don't need a huge amount of space, but need enough space. And also enough room, obviously, to get these exhibits in. So what I would like is one that guests can walk through right up next to the train track this side. So they're going to be able to walk through the bat cave, and the train is going to be running through it as well at the same time. But then I'd also actually, just to add a little bit of effect to our bat cave for the people on the train, we're going to add in a second exhibit. And I'm going to show you how we're going to work this all into a cave. It looks huge and dominating and awful right now, but it will work. This one is not going to be for guests to walk through. We're going to have to provide some path access for the keepers to look after them, but that's it. No guests are going to be coming in this side. It's just going to be for the effect of a slightly larger cave area. So to start off with on these, I do want to come in and customize them. So we're going to take off all of the walls to nothing. Everything is going to be literally nothing. We don't want to see any walls. We don't want to see any ceilings. I actually don't even want to see the doorways on this. So again, the doors, we're just going to say none. Floor, I'm going to say none as well. So we're going to remove the floor. We're literally going to remove everything, and it's going to be this hollow pathway that looks completely odd. And then we'll go ahead and do exactly the same thing on this side. So we're left with a really rather odd thing looking like this. Now I do want to, before I do any terraforming, connect up this pathway here. So we're just going to go for, I think actually, because it's a cave, let's go for the block path, which I think will add a nice little effect to it. And we're just going to kind of curve it around here. I haven't got angle snap on. We'll just curve it back round to join up the pathway if we can somewhere over here. So it's not going to like it. Let's see where we can come out of the path to start off with. Okay, there. And then maybe we could curve it in like this. We can make a nice entrance out of that, I think. And then we'll do the same thing this side. So we're just going to curve this back round. Yes, that can meet that keeper path over here. If we hold Z on our keyboard, remember, we're going to get a little bit more of a fluid movement in this. So let's bring this round. Do we want it to, I don't know if we want it to meet up on that corner actually, because I quite like that that was square there. So let's meet up slightly further down like that with our pathway there. So they're going to walk in and out of the bat cave from these paths. So we've got that in, and we know that when we terraform as well, it's not going to interrupt any of that path work there. Now for the staff, I don't want guest access here, so we are annoyingly going to have to upgrade part of that path to a staff path there, which is okay. But then we're going to carry it on with just a dirt path so it looks a little bit more natural, and connect this in round the back so it's all really nice and hidden in there like that. And then of course we want to add in our animals. So I have already actually come into exhibit trading and purchased some fruit bats, and they are not cheap. I will add, like, you're looking at over $1,000 for each animal, and they can take up to 35 in one exhibit. So I have got 24 here. So I'm going to have 6 females and 6 males in each one to start off with. Of course, that population will grow. So we're going to say send to zoo, we'll send that to this one. Of course, that is now coming with the framing. So you could do all of that afterwards if you wanted to. It's probably easier. And then we'll do the same here. So we'll take these 12 fruit bats and stick them into this side. So now let's come back and recustomize it. If we say sink wall and ceiling material, that makes it a lot easier. I kind of forgot that the first time. So we can remove all of these. And then let's also remove those doors. And we'll do the same thing this side. So we'll just say sink wall and ceiling, change one of them to none, and then remove our doors as well. So now we have got a few different things set up in here, so we know kind of roughly how big our cave needs to be. What you might want to do as well is actually incorporate some of the walls. So like here, for example, if we turn off sink now, I don't know which wall it's going to be. Okay, not that one. Okay, it's wall 1. We can add that in as solid just to kind of like show where the edge of the exhibit is and how far we need to go. Let's do exactly the same thing here. So is this wall... So that is wall 2. Yeah, so we know how high now and how wide our cave is going to need to be. Now I'm actually going to whiz through and do some of the enrichment research, because what I would like to do is probably actually cover up this side of this exhibit just to make it a little bit smaller. So we've only got the path on this side actually showing to any guests. So we'll see how that goes. But we do want to do some research to get all of our enrichment levels. So I'm going to just whiz through that and then we'll come back to it and start actually building out our cave. And just like that, several months later in game, we have completed our bat research. So now we have all of the enrichment items available to us. So on this side, I think I am probably just going to add all of them for now. If we want to remove some, then we can. You kind of only need, like I'll show you in exhibits, you only need 1 from each level to keep your animals at 100% happiness in terms of the layout. However, usually I tend to just add them all because it adds a bit more interest. Now over here, I do want to be a little bit careful because we're not even going to show this side of it. So there's not really any point in us having enrichment on the other side because it may just stick out through the rockwork that we're going to add. So I think we'll add in what we can, yeah, for this side, and that gives them 100% anyway. So those bats are going to be happy. So this gives us all of the different things that we're going to have in our cave, which looks quite busy actually at the moment. And it is quite tight to the train track, but the train does come through all right, so it's not too bad. So let's talk about actually making the cave itself. Now there's 2 ways to do this. You could of course come into nature and start just building up a huge rock cave, or you could use the terrain to your advantage. So that is actually what we're going to do here. So I think what we are going to do is use a terrain stamp tool over this side, because then we can get it as close as we can to the path and get it just up to the right height essentially. So if we go like this, we'll get that up to pretty much the height that we need for our actual cave, and then we can come into flatten foundation. We click here, oh, let's turn the intensity up a little bit, and we'll also turn the size up just a tiny bit as well. We'll come into flatten to foundation here, get this height, and we're going to draw this. It's going to look awful in the middle, don't worry, we'll sort this out. We're going to draw this across the entire area, like this, right up to this other wall over this side, and out a little bit. Now we're going to come in and use pull, and you probably want to turn the intensity down a little bit on this. I'm just going to use it at maximum to start off with to get in kind of the back of our cave at least. A little bit more quickly. But just light touches with your mouse is all that you need here. So just making sure you've got that angle looking at that white circle to bring it out how you want. And then you can kind of touch it up. Again, if you just click with the mouse and drag very quickly, you'll get some nice little sort of touches to that. Again, turn the intensity down if you're finding it's a little bit too much for you. And we also want to kind of make sure that this top isn't just completely flat and has a bit more interest to it. So let's just add a couple of lumps and bumps here or there to show the top of the cave. And of course, if we don't like it, we can come out and smooth it, push it down a little bit, just to give it a slightly more natural feel. Now, of course, this is totally screwed up in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just say flatten to foundation on quite a small brush strength. And I'm just going to push this all back, particularly along that train track. We definitely don't want the train track covered up because that's highly unrealistic. even though the train would actually go through it, but that's beside the point. So let's push that back. We're going to have this nice little tunnel for the train coming through there. We then want to go back into pull and start tidying up some of these bits. So I am going to turn the intensity down now to about 50%. That'll do nicely. And pull what we can out. So again, yeah, we can kind of cover up a lot of this side of the exhibit. We've got a slight metal bar sticking through there, but that's not too bad. We could push this up a tiny bit here as well, just to make sure that we're showing some of those ropes and they're actually coming through. This middle bit, of course, as well, we're going to want this pushed up. So this is where it becomes a little bit fiddly, because you do just have to do a bit of shaping and a bit of manual work around this. But it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Once you kind of get going on it, you'll get into a rhythm and it will happen fairly quickly. Like, we want this, because this is a cave, we want it to feel quite organic, which is why I'm doing it like this and not just using a terrain stamp tool to put in the roof, because we definitely want it to feel like it's actually a natural cave as opposed to kind of a big man-made exhibit one. So again, like, we can try and get through to some of these. We can fill up that hole in a second. That's not a problem. We don't really need to go all the way back to the back wall, but of course we want to show some of the enrichment, otherwise the bats are just going to be flying into essentially a solid rock wall, which isn't always the best look. So once you're kind of happy that you've got a shape of a cave that you're happy with and things aren't sticking kind of up into the cave too badly, sticking out of walls in a really odd manner, then yeah, we're pretty good to go really on this. So let's actually click on this exhibit. We're going to go to customize again, and I'm going to change this wall back to none just so we don't have that in. We're just simply using that as a guide to help us. I have just noticed as well, it's always little bits. Let's just push this back a tiny bit so we've got the stand in the bottom there like that. But yeah, you can see the bats are flying around. They're not clipping into the ceiling too badly. Maybe a tiny bit there. Let's just push that back up. But it generally looks pretty sensible, I think. So I think we're kind of there. Like, obviously the outside of it looks absolutely horrendous right now. So this is going to take a lot of rock work ultimately to bring this all together, because you can't get any closer to the path than this. So you're always going to have this kind of high entrance, but we want it to feel quite enclosed as you come in and a bit interesting. So let's start off with a bit of detailing, and we're going to actually just change this surface quickly first. So I'm going to go for rock rough, because that is going to blend into the rock of the cave as well. So we're going to just literally do this all the way around here throughout our cave. So we haven't got any of that long grass that would not be appearing in a dark, dank cave like this. We haven't got any of that on the surfaces at all. Get rid of all of this. So we've just got that rock surface showing through. And you can also do that on the outside as well, like depending on how you want your cave to look. If you want grass on the top, or if you don't, you know, use your rock paint there and it'll be in tune with your theme. I think one of the key points in terms of detailing this as well, and we can now see that we've got rid of the grass, this train track's a little bit bumpy. But one of the key things in terms of detailing this is definitely use the rocks from the theme of your map. So if it's temperate, use the temperate rocks. Tropical, use the tropical rocks, because they're going to blend into your painting here and it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier to sort of look cohesive in the end of it all. So yeah, there we go. We've got our little cave. I don't really mind too much these kind of bumps in the middle here. I think that's quite nice. And yeah, we're sort of all set from that point of view. I kind of think we don't need to do a massive amount of detailing in this. So what I will do is do a custom fence with some LED lighting along the sides of the path, and maybe add in a few little rocks, particularly on this back wall, to help that sort of blend in a little bit better. But a few little rocks or things here and there, maybe some wall lights, safety lights around too. And of course we do want to bring in education as well. So I'll do that in a second, but let's just talk about the entrance and how we can make that interesting. So these are actually base game items, so all of you will have access to these. But the dry stone wall set makes for kind of pretty interesting little entrances, I think, into caves. So we're going to do this sort of away from the cave and then we'll move it in. But to start off with, I'm going to use the buttress base here. And then on top of that, so let's click on this. We're going to hit Control X on our keyboard or advanced move in the menus. I'm going to go back into construction, and then we're going to use the little 2-meter buttress on top of it, just like this, and just raise it up. And then because we've used Control X, we know it's perfectly aligned. Also be aware that you've got the bricks on one side, it's not on the other, so I quite like those facing into the entrance of the cave. So we'll go like that. I don't know, do we want the 4-meter? We could go for the 4-meter actually. Let's do that. So let's have the 4-meter. We'll click tick on this. So we've got these two pieces. So let's go advanced move, and what we're going to do is move this into the front of the cave here. In between, actually, and again we can do some terraforming to move the cave entrances around, but in between the path. So one like this, click tick, and then we'll do Control X, so we're duplicating it and advanced moving, and we'll bring one over to the other side like this as well. And click tick there. And then what I'm going to do actually, I think maybe with this one this side, so we'll select both the pieces and either hit advanced move selection here or hit X on your keyboard. We'll hit X again to get into rotation. I'm going to turn off angle snap. I'm just going to angle this very slightly inwards, just so it seems a little bit more haphazard. And we could even go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Again, just to a slightly different angle so nothing looks super perfect. Just like that. And then what I'd like is some kind of archway in between it. So if you have the European pack, we can use the European Bridge Arch Stone Trim for this. And we can actually change the colour of this. So I'm actually just going to make it a little bit darker so it fits slightly more in with the stone that we have from the buttress walls. Before we place it down, let's hit X here. I'm going to make sure angle snap is turned on. And we're going to just raise this up so it is vertical like this, kind of hovering on the ground just so we can see it. We'll click tick there. And then what we want to do is get the right hand arch wall here. And then if we just rotate it round like that, we should be able to piece these nicely together to form a archway here. So let's select both of those by holding Control on the keyboard, and I'm just going to go move for a second here. And we're going to try and rotate it so it's nicely aligned with these walls. And it may be easier to press X at this point, so let's do that, and then we can control the movement a little bit more greatly. So let's come down here. I don't want this cave entrance to be too high. We're going to go something like that. We want to sort of make sure that it's reasonably even on either side. Well, that's not too bad, so let's click tick there. So now we've got this kind of archway entrance, and all we need to do is come in and fill it in with either terrain or with rock work up here to create a really nice cave entrance. We can of course then have a little look at adding in a back cave sign of some sorts. So if we add a plank of wood, for example, onto the edge here, again make sure we've got angle snap on. Let's angle it perfectly that way, and then we'll also rotate it so it's flat on like that. Then we're going to move it across into the middle. Like, I don't know if we need one that long actually. We could just go for one like this. Let's hover this down over the middle of the arch. We'll press tick there, and then we'll have a second one just above it like that. And then we can come into art shapes and add some lettering to it. And we don't have to go too large. I think we'll just stick to our smaller letters. We're probably going to want some more space for this, but let's see how we go. And with lettering, just hit X before you place your first one and then place it, and then you can come in and change obviously the letter that you want, and then you've got everything nicely aligned and on the same cadence. Of course, if that's what you want. If you want something a bit more funky that's not lined up, then go for that as well. I'm going to say back cave here. And then we are going to want to move these up because there is definitely not enough space with only 2 planks here. So let's select all the letters, hit X, and we'll just shift them up like this. And then we can select our top plank, Control X, or duplicate an advanced move, and then we'll just raise this up to the top like this. So that's not too bad. We could then, if we want to, just add a little bit of extra something around it. We could add in some panels at the back here just to kind of cover this up. And then again, we can use rockwork around this just to create our actual kind of entrance to it. But yeah, I think that these would probably look quite nice behind our Batcave sign here, blocking some of this off so we can use the panels here, just making sure that we're not spilling out over our archway. And we can rotate a bit because the stoneworks, yeah, it can make it look a little bit more natural like this. We'll move this one over to the other side, rotate this back round a bit, and just shift it into place using our X controls here. That kind of gives us a kind of cool entrance. And then if we want to group these all together, let's go ahead and select all of the pieces that we've put in. Then we can hit Control X, and then what we can do... Oh, I haven't got the B. We can fix that in a minute. And what we can do is move this to the other side as well, so that we've got 2 entrances into this. Because again, it may just be easier to just use move for this rather than the X functions, but you can do that however is easiest for you. So again, yeah, we'll have this here. I think we're going to drop this down a little bit so that it's just a little bit closer to the ground. We'll move it right up to that staff path because then we can do something a little bit better with that too. So we've got 2 nice, simple little entrances into here now. And we really just want to go through and kind of fill it up with a lot of rocks. So like I said, I'd definitely stick to the theme that you're in because it's going to help to blend it in a little bit more easily. You could use some of the Aquatic Pack faux rocks if you've got those as well to mix in a few different colours if you want to, similar to what I talked about with the bison habitat. That can always look pretty nice. I would just say when you're putting in your rocks, kind of check heights of them around the exhibit to make sure you're not kind of infiltrating on any of your exhibit enrichment items or anything like that. But then, yeah, what we can do is just come in and fill out the outsides of these entrances, do a little bit more rock work on the walls around here as well. And then the outside of it will look pretty good, I think. there we go, we have the semblance of a bat cave going on here, and like I said, this wall I'm purposefully leaving quite flat and blank because I do want to fit in an indoor habitat into this space, so the building will block most of this. So I'm not too worried about that at the moment, but I think the entrances look kind of cool actually, and I have checked that the train does fit through here because I was a little bit worried that this was too narrow, but actually it's okay. So we're all good on that front. Then if we come out this side, here's the other side entrance to it. And I've really kind of made the keeper one quite small so that it's less noticeable. It's quite packed in with rocks. So that really is just a decorative exhibit as opposed to being something for the guests. But yeah, there we go. And I think the biggest trick for placing in these rocks, and I generally like to use rock number 3 and rock number 4 quite a lot for these because they're nice and sort of flat on top and bottom. They can make quite nice sort of rock formations like this. But make sure that you have random rotation ticked. Use just surface move, don't worry about using X most of the time. You may want to use it in certain locations or specific moments for that. When you have a rock, you can just hold shift on your keyboard to raise it up and down. So then you place in a rock, it's on random rotation, so it's already rotated, so it doesn't look exactly the same. You can hold shift, drop it down a little bit, drop this one down, hold shift again, click in, and just change the heights of it, and that gives a really nice variation, I think, for rock formations like this, and a super easy way to do it. Okay, so the final things I want to touch on today is just a little bit of detailing in a cave. Like, what do you do with something like this? It's pretty open. It doesn't really need a huge amount, but I think a little bit of foliage, like some hanging vines and maybe some moss, that sort of thing, around the place I think would look good. And definitely a little fence just to keep the guests on the actual pathway I think would be needed here. So let's take a little look at the fence to start off with. And I'm actually thinking, in construction, in props, there are set fences, and there's no reason why you can't use some of these, right, rather than trying to create literally your own fence here. So I was thinking something as simple as maybe using one of the metal fences, just a small proportion of the top of it. Let's turn off angle snap as well so we can get it along the path. If we just use a small little bit of the top of it, something like that, it just helps to guide the Sims. So I'm actually going to come out of the cave and just use the world axis for this because it's going to be a hell of a lot easier. So I'm just going to place in the fence at the height we want it, which I'm going to say is probably like that. And then I'd like to add some LED tubes to it. And if you want to know the reason why we're using world access, please go back and watch that stream. I explain it all there, so you can have a look at that. But here you can see we're on exactly the same axis as the fence without having to worrying about snapping to the surface perfectly or anything like that. So yeah, we can come in and place the LED tube at the bottom here like this. Now we can with these, and this is part of the European pack, I'm going to say on for this. We can come in here and change the colour of it. So I'm kind of thinking like maybe white, maybe slightly yellow might be quite good for this. I don't know what colour safety lights would be, but that seems alright. If we then click on that and on our fence piece, we're just going to do something super basic like this. You can add as many props to it as you want, obviously. We're going to merge this scenery into a group, and then we're going to hit move. So now we're coming away from the world access, and we're going to turn off angle snap. But we know that our LED and our little fence piece are perfectly aligned, so we're not going to have any troubles placing this in. So what we're going to do is come back to kind of the start here and start to place it in, I think, from around about this point. So we're just going to line it up with the edge of the path, and then here we can come in and click advance move and duplicate, and then we're just going to move it along very simply, rotate it as necessary, and get these all into place along the edge of our path. Then once you've done that on both sides, you'll have something like this. So actually, if we just change it to nighttime, we can have a look at that lighting now. It's oh, there we go. The effect of it's on. So we are getting this sort of safety lighting in the cave, which is pretty cool, I think. We can then start to add a few more little effect lights if we want to. So we do have things like these little spotlights, which can add some nice dynamic to certain parts of the walls if we want to. We've then got like area lights we could add, which I think is probably, we don't really need a stadium light in here. Probably what we want. We do have these braziers as well if you have the Twilight pack, which are pretty cool. If I click play, you'll see they've got fire in them. That could be kind of a cool thing to have in a cave, if I'm honest. Otherwise, I think what we're probably going to do is just add in a couple more safety lights like this one. So this is the Conservation Solar Garden light, so you'd need the Conservation pack for this. Again, please do check out my Instant Gaming link, which is in the description below if you want some big discounts. As of the moment of recording this, there is a massive Frontier sale on Steam, so go and check that out first because there's some great discounts right at the moment on Steam as well. Do go and check that out if you're missing any of those DLCs or those packs. But yeah, we're just going to add in a few, I think, across the ceiling like this, which will add a nice, simple dynamic to it. We could go crazy with different coloured LEDs and kind of building atmosphere that way. But actually, I don't really think it's too needed in this case. I think just a couple of lights, particularly to sort of highlight this back wall as well, would be all that's needed in here. And it feels a little bit more tasteful, shall we say, for our little cave. So again, we've just got a line to surface on. I'm holding shift just to sink them slightly back further into the wall like this. And that's pretty much all that's needed, really. Let's maybe have a couple more on the entrance over the train track here, just so people can see where they're going in that case. We could even hide some in the bottom of the rocks over here too. So I think something like that creates quite an eerie nighttime atmosphere in our cave. Because I do find as well in daytime, this is much brighter than actually it would be inside a very dark cave, I think. So I kind of do from the path decorations point of view. Then for a bit of greenery, what I'm actually going to use is this caribou moss, I think, spread out across some of the walls like this, just to add a little bit of texture. Again, we're aligning to surface, holding shift on our keyboard and just freely moving them into the rock formations like this, just so we can kind of cover a bit of it and make it feel a little bit more dank and also alive, add a bit of texture to some of these big rock walls as well. So there are some larger ones here we could use, certainly, cover up a bit more of the wall with some of this moss, definitely on the ceiling as well. It would be quite nice to have that. So let's go here and we'll just sink it back in. We kind of want to make sure that we're not going too big in certain places because then it will overhang a little bit oddly and look like it's not really clinging to the rocks in that sense. But yeah, you see, it's very subtle. Very subtle, like this, exactly like this actually. So let's delete that one out. But yeah, it's a very subtle little effect, but I do think it adds quite a lot to the cave overall, just having this little bit of extra greenery. And you could add in a bit of something else if you wanted to, but I think this moss is probably all that's really needed. Obviously you're not going to have huge amounts of green things in a cave like this, so I feel like a bit of moss makes a bit of sense and will be enough. We've also got this hanging moss which we could use to decorate up some of these enrichment items, like this bat box over here. We could definitely use it on this. Just hanging right off the edge here, I think would be a nice little thing to have. Add to the sort of creepiness of our cave overall. And it can be somewhat difficult to add these around because of the kind of craziness of our cave walls, because it's not all uniform. But you could find a few little spots for it and it would look quite nice. Just something like that around some of the enrichment items I think will do. And I think that's really it. Right, I don't think we really need too much more in here. One thing we absolutely do want to do, of course, is come in and provide education. So we'll need some of our exhibit stands for this. So I'm actually thinking what I will do is stick these quite close to the beginning over here. So let's just flip this round. We'll have it slightly off the path like this. I'm just going to leave the exhibit box exposed. I don't think it's too bad in here. I'll lower it down a little bit so it's slightly less obvious. And have that like that. And then we'll have one more over at the other end as well. So perhaps in this little spot would be quite good. So that's really all the education that we need. And then of course, if we want to make money from it, we do want to come into guest facilities, finance, and add in a couple of donation boxes. Now, I'm going to try and hide these because I think they look awful, but we might not be able to. So let's actually just go and get our FewZoo pink ones. No one's donated in these boxes, interestingly. Yeah, so everyone's really hanging out here to watch the grey seals and not down this end, which is interesting indeed, but there we go. You can kind of check that and make sure they're in decent positions by seeing how much has been donated there. Now, it is going to be a little bit tricky to cover these up, so we may just have to bite the bullet and have them exposed, unfortunately. We could slot one in this little gap here, which isn't too bad. I don't love it, but it's alright. We'll have another one down at this end. There we go. So yeah, that kind of completes the little bat cave there. And hopefully that's given you some inspiration ideas of how you could create your own caves. Maybe not necessarily for bats, maybe for lots of things. You could do some cool little underground exhibits in this format, I think, for sure. So like I said, next time we're going to come in and put in our first indoor habitat over here for our sand cats, which should fit into this space quite nicely. Going to create a large custom indoor building and actually talk about how we can get animals to walk over the guests, over paths. And that's not just applicable to Sandbox, this is franchise mode. So yeah, we'll get that in next time. But for now, I think that's going to be it. I am going to go ahead and add in a little bit of foliage and things like that over the edge of our cave here. And I'll show you the end results in a second. So a massive thank you again to Michael W for that idea. If you've got other ideas of what you'd like to see in the zoo or any other questions you want answered as part of this beginner's guide series, please do let me know in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed the video, likes and comments in general are really greatly appreciated, and please do subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more Planet Zoo or City Skylines content. But that's all from me for now, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you again next time. Bye bye!